So we are on. People are joining. There's 15 people. For the people that are here so far, welcome. We're just waiting for some more people to join, if that's okay. So we'll be kicking off the webinar in probably about 3 minutes. So we'll let more people pile on. Yeah. Hopefully everybody's enjoying the sun. If you're in London anyway, I'm sure it's sunny elsewhere.
Yeah, it's gorgeous here in Norfolk.
Yeah, almost too hot, but that's okay. Typical Brit, moaning if it's raining, moaning if it's too hot, but that's it. So yeah, we'll wait another couple of minutes and then we'll start, hopefully, for people joining. It's going to be recorded, just in case people didn't know. Cool. Maybe just another 30 seconds and we'll start and get people get through a round of introductions. Another 30 seconds, I think. We should be good. We should be good. Cool, I think we'll kick off. So look, thank you for everybody that's joined. Ultimately, everybody on the call, a bit of housekeeping. This is recorded, so if some of your colleagues can't join or someone that you would know would be interested in the webinar, please do share the recording, which we'll share after. But we'd like to welcome you to a webinar today on Retail Media Unlocked. The broad topic is the rise in retail media networks, a retailer and an advertiser perspective. So hopefully all of us on the call that we have here today can provide you, the audience, some insights on what we see is going on in the space as well. In terms of introductions, I'll hand that over to Dan to begin with, if that's okay.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everyone. So Dan Sands, I'm a media sales director at Zitcha. So Zitcha is a retail media platform, so helping retailers build a unified retail media network all the way from the planning phase through to activation across on-site, in-store, and off-site as well. So really looking forward to the session today.
Good. Bernal?
Hello, this is Bernal. I'm working at Artefact. Artefact is a digital marketing agency, but also a data consultancy. So we got plenty of capabilities in terms of data marketing also. And I work for Artefact as a head of MarTech and retail media. So this is my favorite topic, as you can imagine. I'm looking forward to the session.
Good. So Phil, I'm the Chief Revenue Officer of a business called mediarithmics. Mediarithmics is a modern CDP deploying the best of CDP, DMP, and data collaboration capabilities, which for our customers means that they can deploy any type of data marketing use case. And for retailers, that means also retail media, working with some of the bigger retailers across Europe as well. So really looking forward to this discussion because it's very pertinent at the moment. With regard to what's going on in the industry. It's a high growth sector, and I'll talk about the context in a minute. Just a bit of housekeeping as well for everybody on the call. There is the ability, I believe, to ask questions in the little box down to your right. So if you do have questions that you would like to ask the audience, I can field those questions as well throughout. I'm more than happy to interweave them. Also more than happy to add some questions at the end as well. So if we kick off, and I'll just give a little bit of context to the audience, if that's okay, before we dive into some of the meatier topics with regard to what we're going to be talking about today. So if we look at retail media, I guess from a growth point of view, it's reached £3 billion in spend in the last 7 years in the UK. So just to give everybody context of what that means, search took 17 years and social took 13 years. So it's accelerating much, much faster than what we see in more mature channels that we operate in today. If we look at linear TV, historically one of the bigger channels where advertisers spend, it will overtake linear TV in the coming years. It's already at 128 billion globally and closing in on that sector. 52% of retailers have adopted some form of a retail media network the highest adopters coming in Europe, which is probably most interesting for people on the call, considering we're doing this from Europe, and 54% in the US, and 64%, if we're looking from a US point of view, plan a retail media network in 2024. And this was surveyed across 450 director level roles from US retail media, from US retail companies as well. So you can see from the context there, high growth sector, lots of money, lots of growth, lots of thoughts and where that goes from a lot of retailers today. There are now, just to be clear, over 200 retail media networks globally. So that is it's a significant figure in terms of people that were investing in the sector, which is great to see. And hopefully we can talk about today some of the things that are happening, across the sector, both from a retailer perspective, which is interesting, of course, where that supply exists, and then also from an advertiser or a brand point of view as well. So if we just dive into the questions, to begin with, why have retailers built a retail media network, number one, and how are they being approached in a smart way? Now, I've talked and rambled on for a couple of minutes. I'll hand this over to Dan to get your opinion on this.
So I think why retailers are kind of building retail media networks, I mean, there's a couple of reasons, right? The first and foremost, there'll be no surprise, it's a high margin revenue stream. So the revenue opportunity to be able to impact on the bottom line is substantial for retailers. There's obviously then kind of the customer element, and how do you drive greater personalization to your customers and promote the products that are right for them at the right time. So I think there's kind of dual benefit there for the retailer from a customer and from a revenue perspective on kind of the why are they building retail media networks. And I think from a timing perspective, obviously the kind of tech that we've seen over the last few years has really enabled it. We've seen Amazon play heavily in this space. So retailers have kind of cottoned on to the opportunity from what they've seen Amazon do. And we've also seen from an advertiser perspective, kind of the deprecation of of cookies, which then means first party data is more valuable than it ever has been before. So I think there's multiple factors as to the why retailers have kind of started setting up their networks. Timing in the market's perfect. In terms of kind of how are they approaching it in a smart way, I think if I think back a few years when I started getting into the retail media space, it was very much around the on-site opportunity. So again, following Amazon's lead, it was how do I kind of monetize my on-site and deliver sponsored products and display media through these kind of ad serving technologies that were available. So it was very much a focus on on-site. I think all retailers now understand that retail media is kind of far beyond the on-site opportunity, and then it needs to look at their channels holistically, so on-site, off-site, and in-store, and really start to build what we would consider a unified retail media network. So when I say unified, it's rather than having multi-channel, it's how do I deliver a unified experience for advertisers to come into my network, to be able to book, activate, and measure campaigns regardless of the channel that I'm activating against. So yeah, I think that the unified approach is something we're hearing a lot more of. We heard Nectar 360 speak about it in Cannes this year. It's a real big focus for them, and easier said than done. I think there's only a few retailers globally, Phil, that are actually delivering unified retail media networks. So I think we'll hear that word more and more over the coming years.
Yeah, interesting. I was at Cannes as well, and the retail media topic was rife, more so than it's ever been at Cannes, and I think that's only going to continue to grow. Normally, I think historically at Cannes, there was very, very few retailers, and it was really refreshing, I think, for me anyway, this year, seeing lots of retailers walking around, looking to get involved in a lot of the conversation from a retail media point of view, which is just testament to how much the medium is growing.
I think also there was a nice crossover of retail media and commerce media in Cannes, right? So there was Chase Bank there and United Airlines, and we saw a big presence and a lot of shared learning from commerce media and retail media, which I found really interesting.
Yeah, no, fully agree. And like, I guess between us as well, do we think that there's any specific retailer when we talk about why retailers buy a retail media network, and you reference things like margin and incremental revenue streams and things like this? Are there any retailers where it's better for when it comes to building a retail media network? And I think if we look at things like, and I guess my point of view on this is, retailers that are selling things like TVs where, typically the margin is very thin. You've even got grocers where the margin is relatively thin and it becomes like a volume game in terms of how much they sell. But I guess the question I'm trying to get to here is, does a retail media network serve a specific type of retailer, or can any retailer build one?
No, I think any retailer can build one. Obviously, there's a varying degree of scale to which they can build one. I think all retail media networks are different. I think it's really important for retailers when they're considering building their network to understand what is their value proposition in what is increasingly a competitive market. So really understanding what's the value of your retail media network and what's the differentiator in market. And I think Co-op, as an example, have done a great job of this, right? They understand they're a convenience retail media network. And from an on-site perspective, they're not going to be able to drive the scale that maybe a Tesco's or a Nectar can drive. But what they do have is a substantial footprint from an in-store perspective and a unique audience that's coming to them frequently, and they're going to be more impulsive in their purchasing. So they've really honed in on what it means to them to be a retail media network and position themselves smartly. So to answer your question, I think every retailer within reason can have a retail media network, but it's about understanding what's your position in the market.
Yeah, no, agreed. And I think if we talk about it from a mediarithmics perspective and then how we, I guess, interact with retailers, I think from my point of view and opinion, when we're talking about retailers and how they're building it in a smart way, I think there's a couple of things that we notice are quite common just for everybody on the call or the webinar is they really approach it from a two-pronged strategy viewpoint, which is initiatives number one and tech number two, right? So if we talk about initiatives, what do I mean by that? So if we're talking about phase one, that might be thinking about things like, what is your first-party data strategy, right? Do you have first-party data? Is it consented? How can you use that first-party data strategy? Do you have a measurement framework in place? Do you have the team and talent available as well, which is a really big one, actually, for retailers going into the retail or the digital retail media sphere, because typically those types of skill sets don't normally exist within a retailer today. If we kind of go to phase two, that might be looking at things like, finance setup. So do you need to report things differently from an ad point of view versus what you report things from a product perspective? Also things like segmentation, moving through to what it might be from a run point of view. And this is maybe for some retailers often the distant future, which is data collaboration, which is very common, I guess, in the media space, talking between publishers and broadcasters, but potentially less common, I think, in the retail space. So that really for me is kind of the initiatives angle. And then you have the technology angle as well, right? So what technology do you actually need as a retailer to make it successful in the digital retail media realm? It's looking at things like, do you have a data warehouse? Is all your data captured and stored in one place? And can your data team have access to that data? Have you invested in sponsored products? Moving through to things like, do you have a CDP, which is a little bit more user-friendly for marketing and commercial people internally? Do you have an ad server, or do you have a retail media specific ad server? Do you have access to a DSP? So that there's lots of retailers, I think, in the UK and also in the US that are using the trade desk, for example, from a retail media perspective off-site. That also has its ramifications around margin as well. And it kind of really links with that data collaboration piece when you get to run or phase three is, do you need to start investing in things like data clean rooms? Now, a lot of those steps are interchangeable, I think, but they're just some of the building blocks I think retailers need to think about, or the smarter retailers have thought about when they're setting up a retail media network. Do you tend to align with that, Dan?
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I think, like you said, they are interchangeable in terms of what are the component parts that you need, depending on what your positioning in market is. Obviously, if you've got a large store footprint, then you would be looking more towards the in-store digital screen route, and therefore what's my CMS, and I need a CMS that can integrate my retail media network. So yeah, I think it varies retailer to retailer. You're right, they're absolutely interchangeable. But yeah, couldn't agree more, Phil.
There's a question that's come in. Happy to answer it now. I can answer it, or you can, or Berno, you can as well. Google's recent announcement to halt the deprecation of the third-party cookie in Chrome has significant implications for advertising. Do you believe that it could slow down further expansion of retail media outside of Amazon?
Okay, so this announcement has been done very recently, just last week. It is true that Google moves the market in many ways, and we've been preparing for the third-party cookie deprecation for the last 4 years. And that has kind of changed a little bit, or is changing a little bit, the approach to the nearly future, and that could have some kind of impact on retail media networks. But the reality is that because over the last couple of years, advertisers have been preparing for those that deprecation that has been delayed a few times already. My perception is that they've seen the benefits of some first-party data and some targeting capabilities that retail media networks can offer. So from my point of view, if it is impacted, it will be impacted in a minimum way, because again, the experiences with retailers' data are very good. In general, we see that the final customer is interacting very well with ads that use data from retailers. So I don't think the impact will be huge on retail media networks. That's my initial thoughts, let's say, as the announcement has been done just last week from Google.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think the impact we're still obviously yet to see, but I think it'll be minimal. I think it's also worth remembering that retail media is not purely on-site, it's not purely digital. So in-store is still the majority of sales happen within an in-store environment. And the retail media in-store, I think there's still a lot of growth to be had there. So it might just slightly shift the focus from a retail media network perspective. But no, I don't think it'd have a huge impact in the growth overall of retail media.
I mean, I tend to agree with both of you. Also, the way that Google's kind of deprecating cookies now is they're still going, because they're going to surface obviously consent more prominently, right? So eventually, the usefulness of the third-party cookie will not exist anymore. It's just in a different guise. I think it doesn't really change from our perspective, and similar to your opinions is, people have been preparing for the end of the cookie for many years now, 3, 4, 5 years. What that means for retailers, what that even means for media owners is it's all about still, obtaining and holding on to consented first-party data, which is number one. Obviously that helps from an activation perspective and a measurement point of view. But there are other solutions in the industry as well that are, still very prominent as well. Things like universal IDs, other solutions like data collaboration between partners as well. So, for us, it's slightly frustrating, I think, for the wider industry that they've gone down the road of not outrightly deprecating cookies, but at the end of the day, it's going to remain the same thing for us. So people still need to be prepared, and there's still absolutely a massive opportunity with retail media. I'll move on because we spent a bit of time on that. I'll hand this actually over to you, Berno, if that's okay. How are advertisers interacting with retail media networks, and what value do they actually expect from a retail media network?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, because I understand that retailers, at the end of the day, they need to understand how digital marketers interact with the different platforms and what they expect, so they can adapt their solutions to what they are building. So I would, in terms of interacting with retail media networks, I would split this into 3 main pillars, which is data utilization, ad inventory, and formats, and then performance analytics. I believe those are the 3 main pillars when we talk about executives or digital marketers going into the different platforms and what they are going to be using, right? In terms of data utilization, it is super important. And we were talking about the third-party cookies deprecation, during these last 2 years, 3 years, we have found out, or advertisers have found out, that there are other data providers like retail media networks that can provide very relevant audiences with a very good engagement from customers, and that is what, at the end of the day, an advertiser cares about. And then the ad inventory and formats, of course, that is important. The fact that we can do some utilize different various ad formats, and also the fact that we can tell a story to the final customer, right? So we can switch ad formats and ad types based on their stage in the funnel for conversion. So that is super important. And of course, as we saw, there is more, let's say, ways to reach out to other traditional channels, even through digital, like video, for example, or connected TV. And that is also something that it will be very valuable for any advertiser. And finally, of course, if we can't track it, if we can't analyze it, it doesn't exist for digital marketing. So I believe that performance analytics and the way we go into the platforms, we understand how our different ads have performed and what next actions we can do, also insights into not only into the campaign performance, but also the customer behavior. It's super relevant. We talk about the expected value, or how we make the difference, how we compare between the different retail media networks. At the end of the day, is just understanding that the targeting capabilities are crucial in this case. Also, the fact that we can integrate the different marketing solutions into our systems or the advertiser systems, like I'm talking about, for example, CRM, that is important, that we are able to compare our data or advertisers' first-party data with retail media networks. There's been some, some concerns in the industry about transparency and control. I'm not talking about retailers, but in digital marketing. So it is important for many advertisers that retail media networks, basically, they are expected to offer transparency in terms of ad placements and cost, along with control over ad creative and targeting parameters. That's super important. And I would say that finally, even if the third-party cookies deprecation is not going to happen anyway, we know that we are using less data right now, the advertisers, compared to the past, because we know that a big percentage of users do not accept cookies. So we need to model that data, and it is super relevant nowadays for advertisers, understanding how they can develop their products, how they can develop their strategies, and so on. So any insights that the retail media network can bring to the advertiser to bring light into the key topics about their business, that will be definitely spot on.
Interesting. I've got actually a couple of questions here and a couple of points. I hear a lot from retailers about the notion of performance analytics and measurement. Obviously that's one of the things that brands expect from a retail media network as well, right? Because it's targeted, but they also expect things like omni-channel measurement, online and offline, etc. And I think that a lot of the rhetoric I hear back is the expectation of that performance is still the same as what they expect from general performance media, e.g. things like search, e.g. things like display or whatever it might do, like a DR display, etc. Do we think on the call that retail media should be measured in line with general performance advertising, or should it have its own metrics? Because I think we're getting a little bit guilty here of going, well, this is what works in search. It's going to give you 10 to 1 ROI. Okay, and this is a retail media network. This is also going to give you 10 to 1 ROI. And I think there's a bit of a disconnect there in terms of what the expectations are being set and what they potentially should be.
That's a very good point. Yeah, obviously, because that's a very good point. I would say that there are two elements of that. On one side, it will depend on the size for the business, for the advertiser, of within their media mix. Let's say if their investment in retail media networks is quite big, the advertisers will have also the human resources specifically applied to that activity. And in that case, it makes sense to be very, very specific in terms of the metrics and how we measure that performance. However, we also see that other advertisers will tend to just adding another activity to their overall mix that is smaller, right?
Yeah.
So from my point of view, and from the point of view of someone that is using and reporting to different advertisers, I believe that the middle way is the best solution in this case. And let me explain. So there will be some metrics that we need to understand that are common to all paid media channels, let's say. For example, you were talking about search. I believe that impression share in a retail media network can be something that is interesting and that is being used also in search as a channel.
Yeah.
However, I agree that there should be some specific elements in terms of, for example, the loopback window of the conversions measurement should be different, and it should be clearly stated when you go into the network and this kind of thing. So yeah, I believe that there are some KPIs or metrics that should be unique for those retail media networks, and also it will vary depending on the niche that the retail media network is trying to cover, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess an example of that look back window piece is if someone's buying toilet paper or targeted with toilet paper, the look back window should be much shorter than someone buying a TV, I guess, from a performance metric point of view, right? So, there's a lot more consideration, is my point, going into buying something or being marketed a TV versus something that is more FMCG.
Yeah, but also even in the case of TVs, it depends when you start your promotion. You may want to consider just a shorter loopback window, because if we imagine that we are using an audience of that retail media network that is targeting users that are interested in buying TVs. Based on my experience, I believe that audience is far more relevant than other audiences, or they are more lower in the funnel compared to other audiences that you can buy from other networks, if it makes sense. So from my point of view, when measuring the performance of those users that have shown their interest in TVs already within the retail media network, the loopback window should be slightly shorter compared to other in-market audiences, for example, from other providers.
Interesting. And is there the notion, I mean, you referenced it as well, brand safety. Now, brand safety in the publishing world is much more rife, I think, in terms of brands expect, brand safety. I think it's a little bit harder for a publisher to guarantee brand safety based just generally on the market. Is there brand safety problems from a retail media network perspective?
It will vary from advertiser to advertiser, but I can say yes, that has been a concern in the past, and it's an always on topic, let's say.
Okay, interesting.
It will vary. Of course, there will be some advertisers that they will care about performance solely, but there will be quite a lot of brands that will definitely will not want to see their ads linked to some pages and some placements.
Okay. Dan, do you have any comments before I move to the next question? Because I'm mindful that we spent a little bit of time on that one.
No, not hugely. I just agree that I think performance and how we measure performance is going to be one of the really interesting topics over the next few years. I think retail media provides a unique opportunity to measure performance, and I'm already seeing some great use cases out there. We work with a retailer that's measuring now kind of off-site campaigns and their performance on sales in store. So I think that's really great and something quite unique from a retail media perspective. We've also seen retail media networks, again, referring back to Co-op, who announced that they were measuring the impact of the media within a local co-op on sales within supermarkets in a certain vicinity. So I think there's going to be some really interesting use cases come out over the next few years, and the performance metrics will certainly shift.
Agreed. But look, I'm mindful about time here as well. What are the challenges associated with achieving, I guess, success with a retail media network, and how can these challenges be addressed? Dan, I'll ping this to you, if that's okay.
Yeah, I think there's a few challenges. A lot of it stemming from what you touched on at the beginning, Phil, right? We need to remember the growth that retail media has gone through over the last 3 years has been incredible. So, I mean, with that growth, retailers have been, and you touched on it earlier again, struggling with how do I kind of set up my organization and how do I resource around retail media? How do I align kind of my commercial activity with suppliers and with advertisers to my media activity? So there's a lot of challenges around that. I think from a tech perspective, we see challenges on legacy systems or fragmented tech. So using, one platform for kind of ad serving, another system, for ad serving online, another platform for ad serving off-site, and how do these two platforms operate together to provide a kind of single view of performance, both for advertisers, but also for the retailers, so they can understand kind of where their network is performing, underperforming, and maximize yield. I think we see a lot of kind of manual process wrapped within that. So whilst retail media offers the promise of high margin, as kind of retail media networks have grown so rapidly, we see kind of a lot of manual workarounds, and we see a lot of retailers now trying to address them and automate where possible. And I think one of the biggest challenges is going through this change is there's now a revenue number associated to retail media networks, right? So you've got teams within retail media networks that are salespeople, and their focus is hitting that revenue commit to the business. So any kind of fear of drop in revenue or loss in focus to address some of the challenges can certainly be tricky. I think where we see retailers addressing it quite successfully is where they've got a real vision of where they want to play in this space. What is the value of their network? What is a defined roadmap to get to where they want to be, with kind of clear horizons within that plan? And I think importantly, with retail media and kind of in a space that's ever evolving, there's a tendency to run after the new shiny thing. I think being really clear on what your horizon plan is for retail media and having commercial unlockers within each horizon, crucially important. And I think partnership, again, Phil, finding the right partner. No retailer can do this alone, whether that be tech partners or whether that be kind of outsourced sales partners. Partnerships for retailers in this space is hugely important. And I think selecting the right partner from both a requirements perspective, can they meet the requirements of what I need today, but also from an ambition perspective, with this kind of ever evolving and innovative space, have they got the ambition that matches mine? And then also, I think importantly is culture within those partnerships, often underlooked and underconsidered. But in a space that is evolving so quickly, I think we see that kind of working strategically and collaboratively is hugely important, because there are going to be multiple partners, and having a culture around all of those partners is key.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about the partners, and kind of links back to technology as well, right? Which is, because it's such a high growth space, there's a ton of technology partners that are trying to sell into retailers as well, right? So, and that for me, and that is the advent of ad tech and martech going, hey, here's new shiny new thing. Let's have a retail media proposition, right? And I'm not going to name any partners on this call, but there are some partners I personally don't think should be in retail media. That's just my general opinion. And those are generally partners that have come from kind of the publishing world, for example. So look, I completely understand that is a challenge for a retailer, because they're coming at this from, well, we're a retailer. What ad tech or martech do we need to choose to actually get ahead of the rest and deliver a really high yield, valuable retail media platform? And that's why it's really important, to your point, Dan. I think, we've got Bernard on the call, businesses like Artefact are really good at helping clients understand, well, this is the strategy, these are the goals we need to achieve, and then actually running processes to find you the right technology, because there is a lot of technology out there as well, right? So it's important that you find the right technology that aligns with your needs and your strategy and your goals. Also, to your point, Dan, culture as well. It's a high-moving, very fast environment. You know, you need a partner that can move quickly with you when things change ever so often in the industry. And then the resources thing I find super interesting as well, right? I mean, I think, you know, retailer potentially outside of London, maybe up in the north, maybe doesn't have access to, you know, talent that typically interacts with agencies where the brand budgets are and the advertiser budgets are. You know, what are your options? You know, do you insource and do you bring people in that, you know, have those connections, but then that could be expensive. You have other businesses in the space like SMG that can parachute people in, which is interesting. I'm sure there are other businesses like that as well. So there's a lot of options that are available to retailers out there that can help overcome those challenges when it comes to technology and resources. And it's just really, for me, down to, you know, what's best for your strategy and where you're looking to get to. But Bernal, do you have any points on that as well? I think you had some points around the advertiser side.
Yeah, I would say that also for retailers, when they are thinking of building their retail media network, they also need to think of the final customer, the digital marketers, right? And resources is also something that you will have to consider. What I mean is that, let's say that at the end of the day, it depends on your niche, but there will be many advertisers that are small, but they want to use your network, right? So asking and also the resources will be scarce, right? So the idea here is that it is easy to access to the platform. It is easy to activate some campaigns and test. It is easy to understand the overall what you are achieving. At the end of the day, it's something that we need to consider that as a retail media network, you will have advertisers that are endemic, but also non-endemic. Imagine that, let's say, you are in the I don't know, you are a retailer of drugs, for example, and then, for example, an insurance company or a travel company will be interested in your audiences just because you have users that are in market with products related to travel, right? Yep. So it is important for advertisers to the easy access to those platforms or to those audiences, and the easier the better, the easier to sell to advertisers later. That is one thing that I would consider. And then there is another challenge for advertisers that is, I mentioned a little bit, but the integration of that network, of that data, of those ads into a higher or a bigger measurement system. That is super important also, especially thinking of those advertisers that are non-endemic, for example. So they can track the actions that they make and report on results. I would stress those two.
Okay, interesting, good. And there's another question that's come in, so I'll ask a question. Either of us can take it. How should retailers who are new to the game evaluate ad tech providers in the retail media space? I mean, I'm sure, Bernal, you have a view on this. I'll give my view very quickly, actually, which is, for me, it's about tying strategy to goals, to use cases, then vendor selection. Because unless you don't have the first three, then there's no point buying the tech. Right. So at that point, then you can have a good understanding. Okay, well, actually, I need to buy an ad server or a CDP or a sponsored product platform or whatever it might be, and then either running a process, and you can do that with businesses like Artefact, or you can do that on your own as well to dive a little bit deeper into the technology. That is my general opinion. Bernal, do you have a view on this, or Dan?
Well, we are ad tech providers. I mean, we are partners with different.
Yeah. Of course.
So, and I think that based on experience, the closer the relationship with that technology is, the more up to date we are, the easier it will be to sell to our clients. And then understanding what is relevant for. Okay, I'm thinking also of the non-endemic part of it because I understand that in the industry that is a big chunk of revenue. Thinking of users advertisers that are selling other services, they will be interested in your audiences if they are relevant, and so it is important also to share that information with the different ad tech providers, and definitely we can leverage your source of revenue when you have the right partners, basically.
Good. Dan?
No, I think I echo what you say, Phil. I think it's about, first of all, what's your goal, right? Identify your goal, identify your channels, identify your operating model. Before you've kind of done all that, then go and look at tech partners and selecting the right one. Don't be shy to reach out to tech partners to speak to them, because there's a lot of expertise out there. So they can certainly help you shape or at least input into what those operating models might be, what are those use cases. So don't be shy to reach out, but having that clear view first and then selecting a tech partner afterwards, hugely important.
Agreed. So I'm mindful of time and mindful of people's attention as well, which is important. Of course, we're all busy, but we'll just go very quickly into a couple of use cases, I think, for everybody on the call in terms of who's driving or delivering retail media or successful retail media networks in Europe anyway, I think. So I'm not sure if everybody on the call knows Fnac. They're a leading French multi-category retailer. They have a huge amount of first-party data, as you can see on the screen there, 36 million unique customer records. So they certainly have the scale as well. They have a lot of people visiting their site every month on web and apps, so it's multi-channel. They also have people in store as well. From a retail media point of view, they leverage their data from a first-party point of view to deliver enriched insights and targeting and data sharing as well. So they have a huge amount of loyalty cards as well. And what are they doing with those loyalty cards? They're going back to that measurement piece as well, which is delivering multi-channel, omni-channel reporting around ROPO, so research online, purchase offline, tying who has seen an ad online to who has gone into store and buy that specific product as well, and feeding that back to the brands that have actually leveraged their retail media network. And they're also delivering omni-channel data activation across leading DSPs in France from a programmatic and then also a social perspective with the walled gardens as well. So they're delivering they have delivered circa 3.3x in revenue growth for the last 5 years, and mediarithmics has been working with Fnac for about 6 years. I'll pass on to Bernal.
Yeah, sure. Very shortly, just saying that Carrefour and Unilever has built an always-on collaboration to nurture, let's say, Carrefour data, very valuable data. So the solution has been like within a data clean room supported by LiveRamp. They merged the data. They identified new potential users for Unilever. And basically what we saw is with the new audiences, the campaigns that were running already, they saw an incremental yearly revenue of 3 million. And indeed, in that specific campaign, what we saw is that because of these works that we've done in Artefact France, an uplift in revenue for that campaign of between 15 and 25%, that can be directly linked to the new audiences that have been created. So let's say that here the main takeaway is that retailers' data are super valuable for final advertisers.
Really interesting. So then you have a view of retailer and brand, obviously, brand being Unilever. And finally, for yourself, Dan?
Yeah, I think it's touched on a lot we spoke about today. So Market Media is the retail media network for the Warehouse Group. The Warehouse Group being one of New Zealand's biggest retail groups. So they have 4 retail banners that sit within the group, and they cover multiple categories. So consumer electronics and GM. So actually quite a complex organization. I think what was clear when we started working with them is that they had a vision of where they wanted to get to. They had a very clear goal, and that was around doubling revenue year on year. But importantly, they knew how they wanted to achieve that, and that was driving automation through their business. So automation through the retail media network to enable activation of kind of audiences across all channels from one single platform. So to Bernal's point, understanding, because they have a varied supplier base across multiple categories, that those suppliers are going to want to engage with their platform in multiple different ways. So how does market media scale and be able to allow all of those advertisers to come into the platform? And they did that through driving automation, which means that those suppliers can self-serve across all three channels, in-store, off-site, and on-site. But they also deliver a managed service as well within the same platform for those larger kind of advertisers or agencies that require a bit more hand-holding, so they've got more complex needs. So I think what they did really smartly was understanding that they needed to drive scale, and the only way to do that was via automation and delivering kind of self-service where possible, but at the same time offering that managed service where needed.
Nice. Super interesting. Warehouse Group, they also had UK operations as well, didn't they? Warehouse Group, I'm sure they did.
Not that I'm aware of,
okay.
or not that I've seen.
Yeah. Okay, good, great. Well, look, unless there's any other questions from the audience, did you guys have any other final thoughts for the audience before we depart?
I think 45 minutes of our voice is enough. So from my side, I'll let everyone slope off nice and happy.
Good. Bernal, any other thoughts from you?
Yes, and there are a lot of advertisers looking for relevant placements and audiences to place their ads on. So any work that goes in that direction will be very welcome in the industry.
Yep, agreed. And I think for me as well, just final thoughts. Yeah, look, it's a growing space. There's a huge amount of opportunity. There's lots of revenue figures against it. I guess there's some instances there's a lot of hype in the retail media space as well. There's obviously lots of challenges which we talked about today. A lot of those challenges are actually solvable as well. With a proper structure and a proper approach to those challenges too. So for anybody on the call that is a brand or a retailer that is thinking about building a retail media network or approaching a retail media network, hopefully we've been able to give you some nice sound bites to help you along that journey. And if you've got any other questions specifically for Zitcha, for Artefact, or for mediarithmics, please feel free to reach out as well. But apart from that, thank you very much, everybody. The recording will be available. We'll circulate that shortly, and please enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.